Mitch, good morning.
Ben, thank you for having me.
Mate, my pleasure. I obviously, when I was reading your notes before jumping on with you, I read that you had an unhealthy obsession with property. Talk me through that.
I think it's where this journey started, and I think like most Australians, once we get a taste of it, we can be heavily obsessed, and it just started for me with our first purchase for a family home back in 2016, and from that it starts, and you just pulse your marketplace around where you are, and you're interested in values or maybe adding some growth or value to your own property, and it went from there and spiraled out of control, and here we are today.
Lovely. It typically starts with that first purchase, which I think in a lot of cases for Australians, it's that primary residence. Is there a reason, like specifically? I'm just curious to know this, by the way, like
Hmm.
why that first home you purchased was the family home? Was that pressure from family, from what your friends were doing?
It was. I wouldn't say it was pressure from family. It was about keeping our family stable. I was on the road a lot at the time and doing a bit of travel for work. And at that time, I was just sort of being transferred, and we thought, you know what, let's jump out of the rental market. We've got the money behind us now. We've been saving and working towards this goal. It's achievable for us now. Let's execute. And I think for most Australians, we know what the feeling of having your own house feels like, and in a safe space that you can make your own and make a home, basically, and that feeling of being house proud. So that was something that we enjoyed as a family, and it allowed us to continue. We were in the marketplace, and we could grow from that home, basically.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, the word pressure, because a common thread that I hear is that there is pressure from other family members to to their children or
Mm.
extended parts of the family to always just get into that first home. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people just naturally just do that.
Yeah, that wasn't for us. It was just more our own self interest. We knew that was a vehicle. We knew that we'd set our goal to do that, and we're working towards it. So it was something that we did on our own accordance.
Awesome. So talking about work,
Hmm.
so you were in environmental engineering, right, prior?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So I worked for a civil construction company called Fulton Hogan, and helped helped build and construct large infrastructure projects. So I was traveling around, so large bypasses down on the south coast, bridges up in the northern rivers, wind farms, all sorts of different things that I worked on, and within the environmental management space. So we were there to support the team with compliance that was required, maybe some new planning requirements as well that the project needed, and just make sure that everything ran smoothly for the construction team and the engineering team. So just all about support to the projects.
Awesome. Was your goal at school to get into engineering?
Absolutely not. No, it just happened naturally. So like most people, when I left school, I was probably more on a path of a professional rugby league career. That was sort of what I was striving towards and working towards, and my whole life was devoted to that training and being as fit as possible. And I suffered a few injuries early on there around sort of 19, and I just had to, that word pivot at the time. I had some major knee reconstructions in both knees, and then I just went, you know what, I'm going to start learning and find my feet. And I was just in environmental management at the time, working as a labourer just to earn money to support my focus then, which was getting to Sydney and training and being able to drive down there. So I was fully supporting myself and getting after it. So that was sort of where it all started. And then when I sort of got into that business, and at the time probably aspirations to grow it and take over it, we were subcontracting to Fulton Hogan, who then poached me. So I just had this natural progression through that career. Stayed in it, actually really enjoyed it. Like I loved what we did. It was challenging. You're solving problems like anything, but it was great. It showed me different parts of the state. I met some great people that were super inspirational as well, and obviously learned a lot along the way. So it was great support. It gave me great learnings. It set me up for what I'm doing right now. Obviously, allowed me to get into property markets because it pays really well, and yeah, something I'll always be grateful for as well.
That's amazing. It's crazy how well, sometimes the dots don't connect in that linear pathway that you'd think, but
I know.
it's crazy how just it sometimes irons out, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
What position were you in when you were playing rugby league?
I was in the middle. I started. I was a little bit faster, but then as I got a little older and a bit heavier, I slowed up. So I started moving into the middle, and back then we just called middle forward, so it was just lock or front row, and sometimes I play as a back row on the edge. People call it. So, but I finished off in the middle.
Nice. So obviously, just going back to your sporting career, you obviously would have been very disciplined, diligent, just around, I guess, your habits,
Mm-hmm.
surrounding your fitness and your skill work, etc. Uh, are you finding now, being a business owner, that you're able to, leverage upon some of those, I guess, habits and skills and, I guess, learnings from that sporting career now into what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's all about having routine and the discipline of day to day, and just that compound effect of just showing up every day when you don't feel like doing it. When you didn't feel like going to training or going to work, and it's so important as a business owner now to keep moving forward and propelling you. So we can definitely draw upon it. The mindset that comes with doing that as well is so important. How you handle different situations, and don't let that control you or your emotions get in the way. You just have to accept it and move on. So I completely I do think that it helps as a business owner, but as a business owner, we're always learning day to day as well. So what we once learned, we've sometimes doesn't quite work either.
I interviewed Matty Schramer, who you'd probably know,
Mm.
who's a buyer's agent on the Gold Coast. He was obviously a professional rugby league player. And,
Yeah.
I asked him, sorry, just let me put my charger in.
Yeah, man.
I asked him, I said, I was asking him around something that maybe, um, something that he'd observed, I think, from his past career um, that was beneficial into what he was doing now as running his own business. And it was,
Mm.
he mentioned that in his career it was a lot of the training they did was very habitual, very boring, just very repetitive, and it was those boring old habits, as I think he said, I'm paraphrasing, that you know you have to do as a buyer's agent.
Yep.
It's very repetitive. It feels very monotonous. And so, did you feel like you've been able to stick to some of those boring old habits because you had that routine back in your career?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. You just have the same routine day to day. You look after yourself, number one, and then you start working through your day, and you prioritize what's important, and you can sort of compartmentalize as well. So I definitely think so. I think more so than, Matty was way ahead of me in his career. I was very young at the time, but I think I can draw more on the, environmental management sort of stuff where it's very process driven. It's very systemized. You need to do things, every day and consistently. I think that you can draw on a lot as well in what we do as buyers agents, which is good. And also reflecting on, I think in construction, when things go wrong, there's always a great process to stop and reflect and learn. That's a great sort of, I guess, tool that we've been able to bring in this business as well, is just trying to understand what we're doing to date. Has it worked? Can we simplify it? Can we do it better? And we move on if something, doesn't go to plan, because that's where we learn from is things that don't go to accord. It's easy to share success and wins, but it's great to stop when something doesn't go to plan and reflect on that.
Totally agree. I was commenting before we got started on your setup with your headphones and
Mm.
your mic and everything, and you mentioned that to me that obviously some of your meetings are done on obviously remotely. Are a lot of your clients are they not local that you're servicing?
I would say like 50% are not local. Yeah, mostly those clients are coming from Sydney or maybe interstate. So, but we're starting to really transition now into a lot more local clients, people that are upsizing, downsizing, first home buyers. Just as we sort of gain some awareness and as a business and a brand here, and the value that we can provide to locals as well. So that's really exciting for us. A lot of our Sydney clientele are obviously relocating into the coast, or maybe they're investing for whatever reason. So I would say, yeah, it's a 50-50 split. But we have to have this set up for that reason. Otherwise, my preference is to meet people personally, but it's not always achievable, and people are extremely time poor these days. So have to be aware of that.
When because you're on the Central Coast, right?
That's right.
And do you guys only service Central Coast?
We do. That's right. Yeah. So geographically down here, our whole focus is the Central Coast. We don't do anything else. So it's our goal to understand this area, and that's our point of difference almost as well, is that we have a team that's specialized here on the coast, and we start to move into core areas specialized. And so,
Okay, nice. So I'm just curious to know this. When you
hmm,
first started out in the Central Coast, was it
yep.
50-50 split, like 50 local, 50 non-local?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. So we would have been heavily weighted towards Sydney. Um, that at the time when we started, it was the COVID lockdown sort of time. So we're coming into 2 years this month, actually. So at that time, people could still inspect property for their purpose of their own home. But if you're an investor, you weren't allowed to make the trip. You had to sort of stay where you were. So naturally, our business attracted a lot of that sort of clientele that were coming from Sydney that had the barrier of being able to get up here and inspect and purchase. So that was something that happened at that time. And at the at that, we were only quite new. We didn't really quite understand. People didn't know who we are or what we did. So people in Sydney tend to understand the value of a buyer's agent a lot more because it's more prevalent and known down there than the Central Coast, which is sometimes can be sleepy and stuck in its old ways.
What do you think has been the trigger point for the local market now to creep up? I mean, obviously 50% is what's on your books at the moment, but obviously
Mm.
there's been a shift in mindset, right? I'm assuming from locals in the Central Coast. What do you think's been the trigger point as to why they're like, hey, I live here, this is a small area, I'm going to seek help? Is it just because, do you think, for example, there's just more transactions going on now with buyers agents? Like, what do you see as the trigger point as to why that's changed?
I feel like we take responsibility for that on our own shoulders. We don't try and blame that people will never know or understand the value. We take a stance that we can get out there and educate and build awareness to local property buyers, to partners like real estate agents or accountants, financial planners, brokers, all these people. So it's something that we wear and we get out there and we always try and meet and build that awareness towards, one, of what we do, and then two, the value we can provide to property buyers, and also to their businesses. That's really important. People tend to think that we're here to disrupt, and it's not the case. We're here to add value to the whole transaction as a whole, and represent property buyers in a way, and provide support to other businesses and partners. So I would say that's the mixture of us. And as we grow and people start to see us in our local marketplace and our branding and our marketing, people are interested in what we do, and it sparks conversation as well.
How's it been working with the real estate agents in the Central Coast from the time that, you mentioned 2 years? Like, how's that process been? Like, were they initially somewhat a bit resistant, and have they become, you know, have they loosened up a bit more? Have they always been just very easy to deal with?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's a lot of the agents, or not most of the agents here have been in the business a long time, so it's quite new to them. And how they've been trained and taught, and their processes that they have, and how they run their business, it's what they're used to, and we call it stuck in their ways, or no one really likes change. As humans, we don't like change. So when we come in and we're like, hey, we're here to represent buyers, sometimes that can make them feel a little bit guarded, or maybe they start to protect themselves and go, hey, you're going to take buyers off me, or you're here to disrupt my business. But it's just slowly building those relationships, building credibility with them, that hey, we're here, we know what we're talking about in the local market, and then building the relationship with them, and educating on how we can actually help them. So breaking those barriers down over time has been something we do, and we still do today. It's not like we don't focus on it anymore. It's our number one priority. But all good things take time, and we're committed to building our business here, and making sure that everyone understands how we're here to help them.
You said breaking down barriers. What's that like? And what does that look like for the local clients you're dealing with? Like, when you are getting in front of them, typically, do you feel like they feel like they may know more than you in terms of, whether it's market knowledge or whether it's getting a deal done? Like, do you feel like they're coming in a bit, I guess, with a bit of resistance, or do you feel like they've gone out to the battlefield, they've lost, and they're a bit
Yeah.
deflated and they need help?
I would say there's a mixture. Most people have resistance. They don't know what we do. They traditionally know, I can buy property myself. Why would I potentially pay someone else to do that? I can do it myself. I've got this process down pat. I bought one 10 years ago. So there's always resistance there. And it's just through our process of learning, what challenges they may have, And if we can help them at all, that's the most important part there, to break those barriers down. Because if someone is really confident in the process and they're getting access to great properties and they've got great local knowledge, then maybe they're not right for our business. But if someone lacks some of those things, then absolutely we'll obviously progress and maybe educate them on our value and how we can help them. But it's getting to that point really quickly and understanding, being clear on who we help and if they have any challenges, and then we can sort of progress and try and break those barriers down.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like it's in the Central Coast, it's still quite new in the sense of, the buyer's agent service. So I'm assuming that a lot of your meetings with locals is quite educational, and
Yep.
you are, I guess, bringing awareness to them around those blind spots that they just probably think they know, but they're just not saying, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Talk to me about, day to day in the Central Coast. I mean, is there a lot of, right now, is it still very competitive, by the way?
I would say there's different marketplaces. There's sort of two speeds: sub-million, first home buyer, investors are back. It's red hot. It's on fire. Just the change in incentives at the moment too. People have got a little bit more money to spend. There's slight sense of FOMO, but it will shift. It'll change. Anything above $1 million, mums and dads, upsize, downsize. Some areas are really tight on stock, which is the challenge. And then you go up, to our premium marketplaces, and it just has to be priced really well. Otherwise, it'll just sit there for a little while.
Super interesting, like what you mentioned around sub 1 mil. Just with where rates are up to at the moment and how they've been progressively going up, and there's obviously scope for it to go up further. Like it's crazy how just some areas just it's red hot still.
It's on fire. That property will launch on a Wednesday to be sold by Sunday at sub-million. There was an auction last weekend at 8 Newcastle Street in Springfield. There was 20 registered bidders. It was guided at 750. It sold for 935,000. So well above the initial guide. And if you do that as a percentage, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it just gives you an example and a quick snapshot of what's happening here.
Insane. What happens in regards to off markets and pre markets in the Central Coast? Like, do you feel like? I guess my question would be like, what percentage of the properties that you purchase overall, like a rough guide, would be on market versus off market?
At the moment, so we've sort of shifted, and it's a good question because we sort of change with the marketplace. So go back, 8 months ago when we had a little bit more power as buyers and there's a little bit more to choose from. We could be patient, we could sort of take our time and work through the campaign. But right now in this environment where we're getting access to properties is a challenge, and there's not many of them. We're probably 80-20 on off-market purchases because we can't wait for them to come to the marketplace, because then we've got 6 other buyers competing for it and it becomes almost like a silent auction. So we're very aware of what's happening around us in the marketplace and trying to strategize that way to get the best outcome for our clients. Now, we've purchased probably 3 in the last 2 weeks that are off market. We're negotiating one right now. So it's definitely something that we've shifted towards and being aware of. It's better value for our clients. And even as a business right now, like we've just launched an exclusive off-market portal. So something we've done for buyers is to give them another, I guess, value opportunity or value add on their journey, that they could come in with a low-cost option and they can quickly identify, I guess, off-market properties that we've sort of gained access to over time through our relationships and knowledge. And they can, quickly identify and get access to those. So
that's really cool. So 80-20, that's huge. So let me ask you this question though. So from my experience with off markets, they don't always, it's not always great in the sense of the vendor might not be motivated. So when I say motivated, like they might not commit to selling. Sometimes it's overpriced, and there's obviously benefits as well. But I guess it's not always so rosy when there's an off market. So with your experience, like, are you finding that when you are getting specific off-market properties, like they're representing, good value for your clients, and you can get the deal done quite quick?
Yeah, definitely. I would say in that sort of sub 1.5 range, they're definitely priced well, and it's up to us too to start talking to the agents early and understand where the expectations have been set through that early sort of campaign, what the conversations were, what their price expectations are. Because if it is overpriced, we're not going to obviously pursue it. We're going to let it go. Anything which is the high end where there's not really much motivation to move, it is very price sensitive. And if they get a price, they'll sell it. They're not interested in obviously downsizing, or there's no motivation to sell. It's just price. So it's just being aware of what marketplace you're in, and the conversations on how you approach with agents and those expectations, and being aware of that as well. Like, we all need to be really aware of what the agent has said to their client, their vendor, early in the campaign, because they may not even want to sell off market. They may have just conditioned them completely to bring it to market and run a campaign, and we don't want to waste time on that. So it's something to be really aware of.
That's a fair point. Have you, I'm kind of sidestepping, have you reached burnout at all, or come close to burnout as an entrepreneur now running your business?
No, I wouldn't say I've reached burnout at all. No, I could definitely go through waves where you get this feeling of overwhelm, but you just have to be able to work through that. And training for me is one thing, breathing's another. Just being able to spend time with family and having support. I think that's the most important thing for all of us as entrepreneurs, is just having a good team around you that we can lean on and trust, which has been really important for me. But I love it. Like, it doesn't feel like work. I can put in some big days, and when you're in flow and you're in movement and you're just building momentum, it just runs. You just run hot, as you're aware. And sometimes it's hard to cool the jets down, but we've got to, so we can rest and recover. And that's important to me too. If I don't feel well rested, I won't start my day. I don't have a routine that I'll get up at 4 a.m. If I need some rest, I'll get it, and then get back into the day and really prioritize what's important. So just being able to work through that, so you don't feel like you're sinking, and outsource what you can is another big thing. You don't have to do everything. That's something I've learned here, is to be able to let go of some responsibility and have trust in people around us that they can get the job done, and ride the success with them.
How long did it take you to start working out that whole concept of delegation? Just as you said, outsourcing. At what point did you realize, hey, I don't need to wear 50 hats, and maybe this other person can do a better job, or maybe my time can be spent in a better place? Like, how long did it take you to work that out?
It happened pretty quickly. I realized that we were getting quite busy. Like everyone, I felt like this whole career transition was going to be in two stages. I'd still sort of run my day-to-day job and have the salary to support the family, and then I could run this business. But it just went really well. So I went, I'm going all in. And I gave it everything that I've got, and realized that, hey, I need to free some of my time up. And that started with marketing. So it just happened organically and naturally that, someone came into the business to really help me with some of that back end marketing and social presence that we had from the start. And Nadine, who that was, has actually now transitioned into the business as a buyer's agent, and she's doing unbelievably well. And just to see her go from strength to strength. So that's just happened organically in growth. And I'm really big, and I draw back on what I've learned in previous careers. And that's just always having, a succession plan for our people that come into business, and sitting down with them and learning, what are your goals? Where do you want to be? And working with them and work to their strengths. So I was just able to do that. And I don't think I ever really had a structured plan to start delegating. It just happened naturally when I thought, what, someone else is better than I am at this. I'm just going to let them run with it. And you still wear the hat slightly, where you still catch up weekly and talk about it, and the overall strategy is going to come back to us, but the execution is with someone else. So that was really great. The other really hard thing in our businesses is when you are attracting prospects, and you feel like maybe you're best positioned to run that meeting and understand what their challenges are, and if we can help them and convert them. So that's a really big step as a business too, where you feel like maybe you might be best positioned, but you just got to bring people with you, give them exposure to the meeting, train them as much as possible, allow them to find their own people, and they just, they excel. And it fulfills you too, being able to watch people actually grow through and achieve what they want, and they run hot like us. So,
yeah, interesting point you just brought up, the last point, just around, sitting in meetings with prospective clients, and then, potentially, starting to train other people up. Because what I've learned after speaking to so many buyers agents, especially founders like you, is they become the biggest bottleneck a lot of the time, which is they're running all the meetings, and there's only so many meetings you can do, so many you can do in a day, and then you can't really start growing because it's all subject to how many more meetings you can do. And so it's great to see that you're obviously training your team, and they're getting upskilled so that they can be proficient and competent with running those meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me about your team. So what's the headcount now?
Got 5, including myself. So we've got 4 BAs that run around on the ground, and then 1 operational support as well.
It's fucking amazing. And so, what's your role now within the company?
It's a good question. I am a problem solver, just providing support to the staff. So everyone has their own roles and responsibilities to go out within their core area, generate business, prospects, convert, run client journeys. If a lead comes into the business that's better with someone else, then they're going to get that. So it's providing support to them, daily, weekly, and giving them, I guess, the best environment to achieve the most. And also, I still manage clients myself, so I will be there for, I'm trying to transition myself into doing some of the higher end stuff. So, we've got clients, 6-7 million right now for residential. We've got commercial stuff from 3 to 6 as well. So, I'm sort of running those journeys. Still, obviously, business development. You have to be doing it every day. That's just fostering existing relationships and building new. But for us as a business, we're trying to go, more deeper and meaningful, not sort of wide and thin. We just focus on the coast, and we know this is our market, and there's plenty of opportunity for us here. So I'm still doing that day to day. And, just strategy, just overall strategy. You have to have direction within a business, as you know, and just constantly thinking, are we going the right direction? Is what we're doing working? Just reflecting on that myself as well, and how we can improve. I don't lean on, there might be people in industry that lean on experience and all these things. We don't do that. We're striving towards, obviously, just learning day to day and excellence, just being the best we can and providing the most value.
Yeah. You said the word problem solver. I thought that was interesting when I asked you your role, and I think that's spot on. I think as a founder of a business, we are problem solving every fucking day. There are problems every day. There's obstacles, and we're solving. I thought that was a really good way to describe it. How would you describe your leadership style, out of curiosity? You've got obviously a team of 5, including yourself, but how do you look at that?
It's a great question, and something I've never really thought about. I think it's lead by example. I think it's just everything that I would ask or expect someone to do, I would do myself. I'd roll my sleeves up and get in there and do it. And now coming back to giving them the confidence to make decisions by themselves, and just knowing that I'll back them 110%. And if they do have a problem or they're at a roadblock, come and talk to me at any time, because I'll help solve it with them. So that culture of just being like, what, I'll lead from the front, if I have to do outbound calls or meetings or, get access to opportunities for clients, I'll do that. And also be there to support them in making their own decisions. And just giving them, I always say to someone, like, come to me with a potential solution. Like, if you've got a problem, come to me with something that you've thought of, and let's talk it through. Let's soundboard it and just try and work through it together. Because I think that's important too. You want to give someone the ability to work through it themselves, and then come back to you and say, hey, look, I had this problem, but this is what I've worked through, and great. The business goes on. It doesn't become a bottleneck, like you said.
Yeah, you also said something about experience. Yeah, I mean, when I started, how old are you, by the way?
31.
31, yeah. So I started my former buyer's agent business, I think I was about 25, hey? And I was copying that a lot just from people, the whole tall poppy in Australia, and, people who were flexing their muscles, like, hey, I've been in this game longer than you, basically. So not you suck, but I'm better than you, effectively, because I've put in more hours than you. And it's an interesting way to look at it. And I think really narrow-minded people think and speak like that. It's all about how good you are. And if you can become extremely good in a very short period of time, and you can maintain that and become better, you win the race. It's very simple. And I always tell people, just because anyone's been in whatever it is, just because someone's been practicing within an industry for a period of time, doesn't earn them any right. It earns them nothing. And all they've got to do is show their customers that they're excellent at what they do. And it's interesting because I know what it's like. It can be quite challenging obviously within the Australian environment, and as being an entrepreneur, people who effectively, that they do try and cut you down. I mean, how do you, like, if you are, I guess, in an environment or you face something like that, like, how do you, because I know it's, for me, it was challenging early on. Like,
Hmm.
how do you deal with that?
I just expect it. I just expect that it's going to happen. And I expect there's people that are going to be your number one supporter. And then when they see you do really well, they're obviously going to try and bring you down. It's something that I just go, you know what, it's going to happen. And I accept it. And it helps me deal with it at that time. But I guess I'm just so laser focused on the vision. And that doesn't really bring me down. It doesn't deter me. I know it's there. I don't listen to it. That was one of my biggest barriers on starting this business. I used to run behind the scenes. I used to do everything I did to my best of my ability without having this big social presence. And look at me, there was no brand, there was no business, there was no known outcome. That was one of the huge things for me is having to move to that and make noise and show success and always be humble in that way, because I knew that people were going to talk about it and you were going to have to deal with things like this. But then when I accepted it and I got to the point where I was like, you know what, it's going to happen. It's something that I believe in, I'm passionate about. I know that we can do really well. I just went after it. And for that day, I've just stayed so focused on what we're doing. I block out the noise. I'm aware of it. You have to be aware of it so you can accept it. And you just get on with your duties. Like,
Mate, you've nailed it. I was speaking to a young girl who's a really up and coming buyer's agent, ex real estate agent, and I had that conversation. You said, you've got to, expect it, like you've got to accept it. I agree, and I said that to her. I said, you've got to acknowledge that there's people that are going to smile at you,
hmm,
competition, your indirect competition, that they're gonna tell you what you want to hear. They're going to act like your biggest fan, but secretly, a lot of them want you to fail. And
hmm,
when you kind of acknowledge that and understand that, it's an absolute game changer around how you just persevere. And as you said, you're focused on the vision and you just stay in your lane, do your shit every day, and you just
hmm,
really, and you move forward. It's great.
exactly. That's right. So it's good. It's fun,
It's fun.
you know? And sometimes they can be your biggest motivators too, right? So that's the other thing. There's always positive from that it's keep up.
What's the biggest, I'm curious to know, this can be completely just, this could be, this could go in any direction in the sense of your answer, but I'm just curious, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from one of your clients? And it may have nothing to do with, obviously, property. I'm just curious, is there any specific lesson, learning that you've taken from a client that comes to mind?
I've learned so much. There's nothing in particular, but I can obviously just share some examples. Like we've had clients and it's something in our business that we get to know them so well and their stories and what they've been through and how they inspire you and their own profession. Like one client we had that worked in almost like recruitment, but his style of how to recruit people and the questions to ask them or the environments to put people in first before because someone can present really well in an interview. They're prepared for it. They're ready. They know they've got 30 minutes. They're going to come polished, but they don't know that the interview might start at a breakfast meeting 15 minutes beforehand and they can help you observe how you've actually interacted with the waiter. Like there's just such little things like that.
Mm.
I've learned how personalities can change along a journey when there's money involved. Money makes people go funny. First interaction with someone might be completely fantastic, and you're like, "Yep, this is my person." Their values, beliefs align, and then people might change over time. We've had clients change from first meeting to briefing to starting our journey together, and then they start to maybe family members get involved and it can influence their decision making and how they actually respond. So many key lessons out there. I can't even narrow one down for you, but honest, every time, like that's something I love about this job too, is being so inspired by others around us within their own businesses and asking them questions on their own success and just come to the realization that those people that have been through such great success, they're no different to us. They're just so disciplined in their daily actions. They can go into risk mode and they can go into growth mode when they want to. They're so sensitive around their time. They respect their time and they know who their people are. And if you're not going to help them get to where they want to go, unfortunately, they're not going to have time for you. It's just what it is. So, yeah, there's a few that come to mind. But every day we're always learning. Every transaction we're always learning. Every client we're always learning. Every real estate agent has a different process. So you just have to be so curious and not be so close-minded and think that you know everything, because every single thing that we happen is different.
I think you said something really profound there in regards to that example about the recruiter where you could start a breakfast 15 minutes prior and observe and see how they treat a waiter or a waitress. And that's fucking powerful, because, I mean, that is a great way, temp check, just to see who someone is around how they treat, for example, a waiter or a waitress. And I think that's so valuable. I actually heard that on a Joe Rogan podcast recently around what someone does in order to understand who someone is. You got to look at those little things. Hey, Mitch, we're going to finish up. I've enjoyed chatting with you. It's good to learn, I guess, more about you and what you're doing and what you're building and who you are. And you know, you've built obviously a really great team in a very short period of time, and you clearly are very focused with where you're going and not trying to take over the world. And I really respect what you're doing and who you are. And good to connect, man.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it, mate. And obviously I appreciate you and what you've done for us, and something I'll always be really grateful for as well.
Cheers. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Ben.